Yeah, breaking up school fights between students is one of the most common ways that teachers get hit by a student at school. Students are fighting in the hallways, they're fighting in the classroom, they're fighting on school buses, they're fighting outside. I mean, it's just fights every day at schools. Teachers are fed up with it. I mean, teachers are fearful of even going to school. Teachers are stressed out. They don't know what's going to happen. Teachers don't even want to go to work. If they do show up at work, some teachers are even fearful about coming out of the classroom, and that's even worse. And so, a recent study conducted by the American Psychological Association, they found that nearly 50% of teachers nationally reported that they have desires or plans to leave the job or even change professions altogether. Yeah, that's a lot. Half of teachers across the country. And even 50% of students reported that since after the pandemic, that they has at least one incident of physical aggression with a student. Yeah. And so so the big question is, what makes schools safe, right? Teachers want to know, how are administrators going to make them safe? How are districts going to make them feel safer, right? So is it security guards, more security guards patrolling the hallways? Is it going to make teachers and students safer? Is it more metal detectors, right? Is it, guns, checking for having police officers with guns in the school? What is it? And I really think there's none of those things, right? Mental health counselor. Most of students need mental health. That's not even necessarily going to solve the problem either, because when you have a culture of violence in a school, none of those things are going to keep people safe, right? You have to get to the heart of the culture. And so, y'all, let's take a look. Have y'all heard about this student? It was an assistant professor in Texas who got her eyeball knocked out by a student who threw a clothes hanger at her. Have y'all heard about this? She got her whole right eyeball knocked out. Let's take a look. Watch this clip, and we're going to come back and talk about it.
A Corsicana ISD school administrator described in graphic detail the classroom attack that left her severely injured. Hello, I'm Steve Eager. Kendra Rogers read a statement to the media, taking no questions, as she described being under attack from the moment she entered the classroom. Fox 4's Sean Rabb in studio with her story. Sean.
Steve, under attack from chairs being hurled, attempting to defend herself and another administrator. She was struck by an object in the face that's taking something precious, both physically and emotionally. Kendra Rogers, holding hands with her husband Eugene, followed by family, walks into the Corsicana ISD boardroom, reliving August 15th, the urgent call for help at Collins Intermediate in a classroom for students with behavioral issues. The teacher trying to calm an out-of-control student.
When I arrived, the teacher and students were outside the classroom. One student was holding his head, having been assaulted by the student remaining in the classroom.
What she describes is a violent confrontation, much more than what the district called a classroom disruption.
He picked up a chair and acted as if he would throw it. He finally did throw it at me, but I caught it midair. He picked up another chair to throw at me when another assistant principal entered the room. I used the first chair to block the second. He picked up a third and threw it at the other assistant principal, and I used that initial chair to block the one that he threw at her. After blocking the chair thrown at the other assistant principal, he threw a wooden hanger at me, but I couldn't stop it fast enough. The hanger hit me in my right eye and knocked it out of the socket. I grabbed blood was pouring out of my head and stumbled out of the classroom door.
Rogers care flighted to Parkland, emergency surgery to try and save her eye.
Doctors were able to reinsert my eye. However, they determined that I've been blinded, and they currently believe that my damage is permanent.
She says it's time for the state to reevaluate the education code and how marginalized students are disciplined.
Overly aggressive students need services to meet their needs, but I do not believe the safety of other students and the educational staff should suffer.
It's not the child's fault per se, but it is the child's fault. It has to be dealt with. You can't just say, well, this person has a mental condition, so we'll let it go.
Attorney George Ashford is not part of this case, but works in both the adult and juvenile system. Ashford says if the boy is charged, it would be a first-degree felony assault. The boy was released to his parents and must stay in a restricted place. But there will have to be a determination made about his conduct that will include psychiatric evaluations.
As severe as his actions were, as they've been described to me, and knowing in fact that he does already have a mental health condition, Sean, I can probably almost say for sure, and his age, him being so young, that's probably going to be inevitable.
The longtime educator says the governor and the legislature are complicit in what happened to her because they failed to fund public schools adequately to meet needs and mandates. The amount of state money per student unchanged since 2019.
I believe in public school education, but what happened to me should never happen to another educator.
Rogers and her husband, who's the Corsicana High School head football coach, taught in many public school districts. Her injury impacting countless numbers. Doctors have said her blindness is permanent and she may lose her eye. She says she's praying and believing for a miracle that her eyesight will be restored, and those many former students believing with her.
Hi, Sean, I have a question quickly, if you don't mind. We didn't hear anything about this. It's like the school locked it down and almost seemed to underplay it. Her injuries are very serious. What was the story behind not saying anything or seeming to play it down?
So the district had no words today after she gave her statement. I can tell you only, Steve, there were HIPAA concerns about her physical injuries, but other than that, the district called it a classroom disruption,
right,
clearly,
which is much more,
with
right?
Another student being assaulted, also much more than a classroom disruption.
All right. Sean Rabb, thank you.
All right, y'all. Hi, I'm Dr. Cicely. Welcome to my channel, where we'll be talking all things school violence from a restorative perspective. And today, we are talking about violence against teachers. That's right. I am going to tell you all what to do the next time you break up a fight between students, or the next time there's a conflict between students and you need to intervene. I'm going to tell you exactly what to do, okay? Because I want to help prevent more teachers, principals, student, any type of school personnel from being assaulted. I'm hearing so many stories, even talking to students who have been removed from traditional schools, and they're put in alternative schools. And it's fighting. Most often it's fighting. And so they've gotten into a fight with a student. And then, a principal or teacher, somebody is trying to break up the fight. And they didn't kick the teacher between the legs. If it's a man, they didn't kick him between the legs. Teacher done got punched or something like that. And then, unfortunately, the student is being charged with assault. And, of course, unfortunately, this teacher, principal, or, staff member may be in some type of pain or even serious injury like Miss Rogers. And so we don't want that to happen, right? So let's talk about it. Okay. So Miss Rogers, Miss Kendra Rogers, in Texas, she, you all saw the video, tragic situation. So basically what happened is she, as assistant principal, she was called on the radio to come and help because two students had gotten into a fight. She got there. This one student who had fought was in the hallway. I'm assuming maybe with other students and the teacher. And then the student who actually threw the clothes hanger at her, that student was in a classroom. So she went in there to intervene. I mean, not when I say intervene, I had a lot of questions. I'm literally left with a lot of questions. Like, I just want to know. Because, she's telling us how she went in there. And the student is throwing chairs at her. And she's catching chairs. She caught a chair. She blocking another chair, blocking this chair. Then she didn't, unfortunately, with her hand, didn't catch it. But her eye caught a clothes hanger. And I just want to know what happened when she went in there. Literally, what did she say? I'm not even trying to blame her in no type of way. Like, believe me, I'm not blaming her in any type of way. But I'm literally like, what did she say to the student? If anything, we don't get any of that, right? And so what it tells me is that this student was feeling, some shame or guilt and even fear about what was going to happen to him, right? Some fear about punishment from the principal, whether he was going to get suspended or expelled, perhaps even punishment from home. There was some fear about what was going to happen, and he was expressing his feelings through throwing objects, perhaps to protect himself. And this is a young boy, right? We don't get much details about this boy, but he has to be, because this school is Collins Intermediate School. It's highly rated. It's a highly rated public school in the Woodlands of Texas. It has 750 students in grades 5 through 6 with a student-teacher ratio of 17-1. So, not to be like fairly small school, right? And apparently, there were approximately 10 students in the classroom when the fight broke out. So that's a small group of students in the classroom. Small group. All right. And so, grades 5 through 6, that means this boy is only like 11 or 12 years old, probably. And so in Texas, this is what really is concerning to me and heartbreaking. In addition to Miss Rogers losing the eye and being blind, right? In addition to that, this 11 or 12-year-old boy in Texas, he is facing first-degree felony charges, right? For a minor. So first-degree felony charges for a minor, it can result in prison time up to 5 to 99 years or life, and or a fine up to $10,000. And so the severity of the charge depends on the intent and the extent of the injuries. Well, someone else is going to be the judge. The prosecutor is going to determine what to charge this boy with. So, like I said, we're talking about 11, 12, maybe even 13-year-old boy at the highest. So this child, he could potentially spend the rest of his life in an adult prison. And so when I heard Miss Rogers' account, like I said, I'm wondering what happened when she went into that classroom. Like, what did she say? I need all the details, Miss Rogers. You know what I'm saying? And it really had me thinking about, how as teachers, as educators, how we can, properly diffuse these situations, right? And definitely we want to be proactive. So restorative practices are 80% proactive in building healthy relationships, cultivating a sense of belonging and community among students, and things of that nature, right? And then also, then the 20% is responsive in terms of repairing harm when it does occur, repairing harm and restoring relationships. So in this case, harm did occur. So we on the responsive side, but really needed this proactive side to build this, trust really between this boy and the principal when she came in the room to really help diffuse that situation, right? So it didn't escalate in that way. So we're going to go to the responsive side. So this has happened. This fight didn't happen. Principal comes in. And I want to share with you out what you should do if this situation occurs for you, right? When there's a conflict that you need to break up, or you're responding to a conflict between students. It could be between staff members, colleagues, whatever. But we're talking about between staff and student right now, right? When you're responding to a conflict or there's been some type of wrongdoing, I want to share restorative questions with you. This is your toolkit, okay? This is what you say, right? So restorative practices, at the root of restorative practices, I should say, central to it are restorative questions. And so these are questions to respond when negative behavior or conflict does occur. And so we have a set of questions for the person who caused harm. And then there's a set of questions for the person who has been harmed. And I'm going to give you both of those, right? And so we want to definitely engage people who have been harmed and those who have caused harm. We want to address inappropriate behavior, right, in a way that places that responsibility for making things right on the person that caused harm, right? And so certainly there's been a fight between two students. This is all the assistant principal knows that she shared with us. At least we don't necessarily know who the aggressor is. We just know one student's in the hallway, and then you got this one student in the classroom who starts throwing chairs at her when she comes in. Well, this is all the information we got, so we're going to kind of assume that's about all she had, because that's really all she shared with us, right? And so you really want to ask the student, to help them to think about their behavior and how their behavior has impacted others. We don't want to go in with aggressive tone or demeanor that is placing blame. We want to get them to basically identify who's been harmed and what has happened, right? So let's look at these categories. Like I said, there's two categories. This first one is, so when things go wrong and someone creates harm, you really want to ask these following questions. First of all, you want to ask what happened. Just very simple. Hey, what happened? Or I heard that you got into a fight. What happened? Right? Give them time and give them time to respond. Verbally. Some cases it may be in writing or whatever, but you want to be quiet and chill. Give them time to respond. And then you want, ask them follow about what were you thinking at the time? And then that's giving them opportunity to really process what happened and to think through it. And you can get more understanding about what happened, right, from their perspective. And then who was affected. So then they can tell more about, okay, if the student had caused some harm against the students in the hallway, he can identify him and start talking about how he was affected, So that's the fourth question. How were they affected? And then the fifth question is, what needs to happen to make things right? That is so big. Giving the student the opportunity to take part in the decision making. Because that's where that fear comes in, right? About what is about to happen to me. Because all too often, schools resort to zero tolerance policy. So you get into a fight, you're suspended automatically. Or you curse a teacher out, you're suspended. All these things. You don't wear the right uniform. You got to go home. Or I'm writing you up. I'm taking something away from you, or I'm pushing you out. And so that is where I'm thinking this young boy is thinking, okay, I done got to this fight. Here come the principal. They done had to call the principal on me. Now he's afraid about the punishment that is coming. And so if the student knows that he's going to be met with an opportunity to engage in a conversation about what happened and how people were affected by it and how he can make things right, he may be more likely to be more calming and willing to engage in the conversation rather than throwing things or rather than fighting more, right? Or throwing his fists, right? And so those are some things to help with the engagement part. So on the other hand, for situations when someone is hurt, we want to ask questions like, what did you think when you realized what happened? That is so important. What did you think when you help them to process, giving them voice about what they have experienced, right? The second one is, what impact has this incident had on you and others? Because, oh my gosh, so often is victims of harm are just silenced, or it's assumed. Other people, like our educators, we want to assume we know what the impact is. Oh, she must feel so bad. She must be embarrassed, or she must be in so much pain, or blah, blah. And sometimes it's something else that we have no idea, right? They may be thinking about, something else had happened that we don't even know about. There may be some other piece of the story that means more to them than what we even realize, right? And the third thing is, what has been the hardest thing for you? Again, giving more voice, allowing them to identify their harms. And then what do you think needs to be done to make things right? It is, again, including the student in collaborating on the decision making about what to do going forward. And, it may not even be that these two students need to be separated, or that, time away from school is going to change the behavior. Most often it doesn't. Time away from school doesn't often change the behavior. In fact, so the fundamental hypothesis for restorative practices is that people are happier, healthier, and more cooperative, and more likely to change their behaviors when people do things with them rather than to them or for them. So doing things with them in that situation looks like talking with students about what happened, who was impacted, what can we do to make things right. And they were part of decision-making process. It doesn't take away consequences. That is the myth. They restorative practice, that is no consequences. Not even true. It's more challenging for a young person to sit up and talk about what they actually did, to take responsibility for something, and to actually listen to how their behaviors impacted others. That's has a more positive effect on changing behavior than just suspending them, go home for a week, go away from us for a week. And sometimes the student may have to be suspended. A student may have to be removed from the school. Sometimes that is true. But when we're talking about the change in behavior, when you're having these conversations using restorative questions, it leads to repairing the harm and restoring the relationship. Like I said, all these questions require a response. So you definitely want to wait and give time for a response, whether it's verbally or in writing. That's going to be very important. And be patient. Don't talk over the student or anything like that. And you also, you want to ask questions in a non-judgmental manner. So your tone, your demeanor, the way you ask the question, you want to ask in a way like you really want to know the answer. You're not assuming. Let me tell you something that, oh my gosh, this is the worst. In this question was asking me, there was a conflict between me and a colleague. It was some years ago. A conflict between me and a colleague. And quite frankly, I was being mistreated by this colleague, right? And I didn't feel like I was new to this company, and I had not, established any trusted relationship with our supervisors. And so I didn't feel like I had anyone to talk to. And this person who was mistreating me, she had a long-standing relationship with the supervisor. So I didn't feel that I could really just go and talk to someone about it. But when I finally did go to talk to him, my supervisor says to me, "What do you think happened?" I was like, what? This is what I'm thinking to myself, what? What do I think happened? Those were my thoughts. And I said, you know what? I didn't even go into it. I didn't even explain it, because by framing the question that way, what do you think happened, it suggests to me that he doesn't believe what I'm going to say anyway. Or he has already formed his own opinion about the matter, right? As a third party, he has formed his own opinion about the matter, And whatever I say is, is not going to give room for really having an honest conversation. And so I didn't even express what happened. And so we want to make sure we're not being judgmental. So we want to communicate in a very genuine way. Definitely. And make sure that, the questions are being asked in, safe space, whether it's public or whether it's private. And so in these situations, if you do feel threatened at all, leave the situation. So, the principal who stayed in the room, she was catching these chairs, it suggested to me that there was something about the situation where she didn't feel particularly threatened. Like, I'm sure she was definitely shocked that he threw a hanger and it resulted in her eye coming out. And so you definitely want to make sure that you're in a safe space for these conversations, right? Let's see, what else I want to share with y'all. So restorative questions definitely help people to take responsibility. It helps them to connect with how they're feeling. And did you also notice that the questions cover past, present, and future, right? What happened? What are you thinking now? What can you do to make things right? So that is very helpful in the change in the behavior, the healing. Oh my gosh, healing is so important. All right, and like I said, the taking responsibility, because we're talking about two kids fighting. We want responsibility to be taken, and we want to repair their relationship. We want to change the behavior. That's the big piece. We want to keep people safe. But I do want to be clear that you can use restorative questions too. We want to make sure that we're reinforcing positive behavior always. Certainly. We definitely want to do that. Okay? Cool. I hope that helps. I hope for healing for Miss Rogers and her family. I hope for healing for the boy and his family. And I hope for healing for the whole school community there in Texas where this incident happened. And I'm really hoping for healing for schools all across the country, all across the world, because the violence in schools, it is a crisis. It is certainly a public health problem, and we have to prevent violence as much as possible. So many administrators in several schools, they are adopting restorative practices as a way to change the culture within schools, as a way to promote positive and healthy school climates and school safety, right? So if that's you, if you're interested, you want to learn more about bringing restorative practices to your classroom or to your school, email me. Check out my email in the description, but it's info@drsisley.com. And do me a favor. Subscribe to my channel, y'all. Come on, subscribe to my channel. Share it with your colleagues. Post it on your social media for me. Like, comment, all those things are much appreciated. And till next time, peace.